So this little mental model that we're discussing, one of the take-home messages for you guys is that what AIARE's trying to focus on is to provide quality content that you can count on. You know it's up to date. It's constantly being updated, and that's not to confuse us as instructors. It's to keep state of the art. And that relieves a lot of pressure on us as instructors so that we can spend our efforts focusing on how we manage the course through modeling, mentoring, and measuring, and spend less time generating content. It really, our role at AIARE, as we see it, is to provide a base minimum bar of here's the stuff to use, but how you use it and how you interact with your students is really what's going to define the quality of the student's experience. It has everything to do with your role as the instructor, and actually it's pretty easy to have a bad course just using curriculum and handing the curriculum. You know, we have to take responsibility for the quality of our own course. Okay, so we're going to break these down into some of these components here. And so the first one, the learning outcomes. These are the gross scale, the course scale learning outcomes. They're the big pictures. Obviously, this gets broken down from within. But when we ran those transects here, a common element was our students need to be able to plan and prepare for travel and avalanche terrain. I think we all get that. Recognizing avalanche terrain. If they can't actually define what is and is not avalanche terrain, and understand the spectrum of avalanche terrain, that's really key. And having a decision-making framework, so they've got some idea of what to do with the information they're being given, and then companion rescue, so that when they're wrong, they have the tools to deal with it. So that's one of our key components. Another is this decision-making framework. So achieving the learning outcomes is the center of our model. Now we're into the AIARE kind of infrastructure components. So the decision-making framework, just to highlight one thing, just to make sure people picked up on it. One of the basic three-legged stool model supporting a terrain choice and travel techniques hasn't changed. We now have a little bit more descriptive detail below. One thing I want to point out is, in case you didn't pick up on it, this line is a different differentiator between kind of actions and tools. So what do? You observe, you identify, you assess, identify, promote, review, evaluate, plan. These are all active actions that happen above the line. Below the line, these are the curriculum tools that support those actions. So we've got understanding field observations, the field observations page. So this understanding field observations, that's the reference we used to call the observation checklist. The idea is we wanted to get rid of the checklist concept for observations, because there is no set of observations that you have to take every day. Instead, we want to have a tool to help us understand our observations. Hence the name change there. And the field observation page is where we record that information. We've got the pre-trip hazard forecast checklist and the human factor solutions. It's a lot of detail in this diagram now. And in some ways, the downside of doing what we've done is we may have complicated the picture to the point that it's harder for the student to grasp the mental model that we're putting out there. So our job is to really give them something a little more simplistic as well. Something it's a three-legged stool, and if any one of those legs of the stool is too spindly, then you don't have enough support for the decision. And as we grow, these little pencils grow into oak trunks. Our ability to manage human factors, observations, and to plan for avalanche terrain travel, those elements that support our choices will grow over time. But if any one of those is ignored, it's catastrophic. The three-legged stool can't be upheld. So coming up with some way to keep the mental model simple for your students, I think, is a really important role that you're going to have to take as the instructor. The decision-making framework, as redesigned, is going to help you link curriculum elements and actions and tools better. But at the same time, we've complicated it, so there may be a little more burden on you to ensure you generate this model mentally in a very simple picture for your students. Any suggestions or thoughts or ideas on how on a course, how do you teach this model to people?
Oftentimes, I'll make decisions based on observations. Then I'll figure out what terrain I'm going to travel in, and then from there I figure out my planning and prep. So this allows you different entry points. It doesn't always start at planning and prep. It may start with terrain selection and then work the way down from there. This is where I want to travel at some point in time. What observations are going to need to be in place? What planning and prep do I have to consider, and what human factors? Who am I going to go with?
I know we say this every time we get together with any one of you, but please don't use the PowerPoints to run your show. The PowerPoints are there as a very loose set of resources to grab from if it works. And I don't ever want to hear another student come back talking about an instructor who is apologizing or dissing slides. It's your responsibility to take out stuff that you don't like or doesn't make sense to you. So we really, really don't, we want to break the paradigm. I think we all, I'm as absolutely complicit in it as anyone else. You know, we've used the PowerPoints to drive the show for us, and that we have to break that model to be successful instructors.
By that all too common scenario of people, they want to ski that line, right? I mean, that's exactly the type of people that the curriculum is meant to deal with. And the way you can teach it is the way that crew resource management approaches those things to control the human factors influence on the decisions and to encourage communication, which is to use a checklist. And so now we're, again, like, let's focus as a teaching tool, the tool that we're going to teach them, which is the pre-trip hazard forecast checklist. And going through that, because what that does is it puts a certain level of objectivity in, and before they get out there and have to actually look at observations to decide and get out their map and decide where they want to go, like Billy's saying, like, do they really do that? No, but the night before, they might be interested in doing that as part of their pre-trip hazard forecast that they're doing, or the morning of. And that's where they create their options. And so if they go through that checklist, it would be impossible for them to objectively pick that rad line in the face of uncertainty unless they're really biasing themselves, right? So it's just an extra layer for them to get through before they can let their human factors make that call. And then if they decide, well, I think it is reasonable to do the rad line, but I'm going to also make these other options. Now when they get out in the field, they don't have to pull out maps. They can enact options a lot easier. Maybe they will pull out maps for some cases, but those decisions are easier. It's preparing for decision making is the focus now, not being out in the field.